Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be starting in a moment. Okay, so firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for making the time today to join us for today's presentation. Conscious and respectful of time, I'm a big believer in starting the presentation on time and finishing the presentation on time, so we are certainly going to be doing that today. A huge thank you to both Josh and Alex as well for their time in regards to today's presentation. We'll be talking about the anatomy of a ransomware attack and the importance of your cyber incident response plan. So we've got Alexander Curti from Emergence Insurance and Josh Ryan from Hunter Broking, as well as myself, Sean Dendel. I'm the Managing Director of Cymax. Josh has 15 years of commercial experience in insurance, strong focus in cyber insurance, and a passion for tech and automation. We've referred a number of clients through to Josh and found his advisory to be exceptionally insightful, where he's adding a lot of value over and above the traditional, typical insurance brokers. Strong belief in cyber threats and attacks will soon be the most common event in regards to insurance, and that's why today's presentation is highly topical. He's also a father of three and comes from a family of insurance professionals, so no doubt that's part of the topic of conversation around the table over dinner. Myself, I've worked in the ICT industry for over 28 years. I'm an ambassador with Opportunity International. I enjoy hiking. I've recently completed the Kokoda Trail and enjoy taking my dog Sasha for a walk most mornings. I'm also an advisory to many boards and senior management around risk, compliance, and leveraging technology to boost productivity. Alex is a young father, loves being outdoors with the kids, a huge passion in regards to software and the tech industry, believes that cybersecurity and insurance are necessary requirements in partnership in 2024, and has a very keen interest in emerging risks and, like me, AI, artificial intelligence. So, Josh, before we hand over to Alex, I'd like to just get your take on what you're seeing in the insurance industry in general, please.
No worries. Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everyone. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Josh Ryan and I'm the Managing Director of Hunter Broking Group. So just wanted to say thanks, Sean, for putting together the presentation today and to help further educate those who are wanting to better understand cyber risks and exposures. So as a client advocate, my experience has been focused around providing strategic insurance advice and claims management support for clients across many different industries. So basically every single cyber event that we've managed has been extremely stressful for our clients. Despite having a professional support network and comprehensive insurance policy in place, the concerns often stem from reputational damage and data recovery. So just to touch on a few examples, we've had clients pay large invoices to fraudulent bank accounts. We've also had clients' entire contact lists stolen and repeatedly targeted. And we've even had a client who was compromised for 2 years without even knowing it. So our focus is to work closely with clients and their specialists to prepare for events and to understand the role of an insurance policy and how diverse that can be. So cyber insurance policies have improved significantly over the last 2 years. Most of the offerings extend to cover both first-party losses and third-party losses. There are products now available that can extend to directors and officers if they are held personally liable for a cyber event. Other crucial coverages that have been businesses have seen to benefit from include socially engineered theft and non-IT contingent business interruption. When we assess an insurance offering, we believe it's important to consider the insurer's support panel and their incident recovery process. We're seeing vast majority of contracts and supplier agreements these days now require cyber insurance or cyber liability coverage and limits as high as up to 20 million. So our advice as an insurance professional would be to focus on access restrictions, frequent data backups, and user awareness training. So back over to you, Sean. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Much appreciated. And I guess to make sure that we continue on time, I'll let everybody know that the Q&A will be available towards the end of the presentation. And on that note, Alex, huge thank you for your time and your insight today. I'll pass it over to you to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you, Josh, for having me be a part of this presentation. Absolutely aligns with what I truly believe in. Just to delve into this, because in the interest of time, what I really want to do is take a quick look at the cyber landscape in Australia, just looking back at 2023 and where we are currently in 2024, which will help shape the context of the rest of the conversation. Apologies. Within 2023, there were 94,000 reports of cybercrime made to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, which is an increase of 23% from 2022. This tallies a total of $100 million in self-reported losses, and in 2022, it was $33 million. This is one reported crime that's happening in the country every 6 minutes. So when we take a look at these three statistics here, we are seeing drastic increases in the number of attacks, frequency of attacks, and severity of attacks within the country. When we take a look at what's happening in the country so far in the first half of the year in 2024, we're seeing the frequency significantly increase. Typically, things like Optus, Medibank, Latitude tend to happen once or twice every year. But in the last 2 months, we've seen huge big-winded attacks occur in the country. Things such as Medisecure, Shell Petroleum, Ticketmaster, and Ticketek have all happened within the last 3 months and have been huge-scale attacks within Australia. Ticketek, for example, resulted in 500 million pieces of personal identifiable information being leaked across the country. Now, as a result of this, some people might be thinking, well, how would I be affected by something like that? But I can almost guarantee that everyone on this call, to some degree, would receive text messages from Coles, Toll, the ATO, or even scam phone calls. And that is a result of PII being leaked from such an attack. When we look into the future, what we're currently seeing, in my opinion, is AI being co-piloted to create efficiency within these attacks. So obviously we're using AI to the betterment of society. We're using it in the medical, pharmaceutical industry, and also to create efficiencies within the way that we operate day to day as a business. So obviously threat actors are utilizing this particular efficiency within the way that they infiltrate and attack certain organizations. Just to give you some high-level examples, deepfakes, which are AI-rendered images or voice cloning of people, are being utilized. There was unfortunately an incident that occurred in Melbourne at a school recently. Dark GPT, which is essentially the underbelly of ChatGPT, and prompt injection, just to name a few. So what the government have had to do is actually impose a really aggressive stick approach to security compliance and also introduce the notifiable data breach scheme. And essentially, after Optus and after Medibank, what they had to do was uplift the fine from what was $2 million to $50 million. When we look at ransomware itself focuses on three core pieces, which is extraction, encryption, and extortion. So for those that don't understand, ransomware is actually a software. Ransomware is a malicious software that locks and encrypts all of your files, your entire business's operational IT or infrastructure, completely seizing your operations entirely. Successful ransomware attacks can lead to devastating business interruption, loss of data, financial damage, and also reputational harm. And attacks are drastically increasing around the world, both in frequency and severity. Now, given the fact that ransomware is actually a software, it is also a business model. It has to operate off a business model, much like software as a service, and it is valued to be a multi-billion-dollar industry globally. Now, some of the largest attacks that we've seen in the world have been as a result of ransomware. Things like NotPetya have resulted in $10 billion worth of losses across the globe, attacking critical infrastructure, including ripple effects down to Australia. Colonial Pipeline is one that I just want to pinpoint because this is an example of tangible critical infrastructure being completely shut down through a ransomware attack. Now, the benefit of Emergence is we've been operating solely within the cyber insurance space in the Australian market for 10 years. And what this means is that we have a long history of claims data, which allows us to understand and aggregate where claims are coming from, what incidents are leading the charge, and what is causing these vulnerabilities and exposures. So I just want to shed some light on some of our statistics as a cyber insurer in this country. In 2021, 65% of all of our claims were led by cyber extortion or ransomware. In 2022, 67% of all claims and calls made to the emergence hotline were led by cyber extortion and ransomware. And when we look at 2023, a staggering 86% of all claims were led by cyber extortion or ransomware. So much like the statistics that we just spoke about in that first slide, we are seeing an aggressive increase in ransomware attacks and attacks in general happening across this country, purely because we are low-hanging fruit. Now, when we look at ransomware, as I touched on, it is a service model. So just to take a look at these 5 software companies that I'm sure every single person on this call relies on to some degree. Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Oracle, and Salesforce are the largest subscription software models that exist currently globally. And this is in its totality valued to be a $300 billion USD industry. Now, over here, what we have are the 5 largest ransomware groups. Now, much like software, ransomware groups also specialize in niche, individual forms of attacks. Lockbit, Play, Hunters, 8base, and Akira are some of the largest ransomware groups that operate on a subscription model, much like software does. And total reported losses are valued to be approximately $1 billion USD. Now, I would actually argue that it's a lot more because that is all that is reported, unfortunately. But when we take a look at ransom as a service, essentially it's the largest growing issue globally. It's ranked within the top 5 risks faced by businesses globally, and they are solely focused on maximizing profit. And the way that this happens is they extract all of your sensitive information and data, and then they encrypt your entire business, completely seizing and halting operations. So when we take a look at cyber insurance and how cyber insurance responds to a ransomware attack, there are 3 critical components that I want to touch on to help demystify what cyber insurance actually is. 3 key components that result in that cover first-party losses, third-party losses, and cyber event response costs. First-party losses relate to losses that directly affect an insured's business. So if an insured is a victim of a ransomware attack, we immediately cover business interruption costs, which cover your decline in revenue or any increased cost in working to keep the business afloat. And the second thing that we cover is the actual ransom or extortion payment to fulfill the demand. The second thing is third-party losses. So these are claims made against the insured due to a cyber event. So there are so many legal repercussions, legal expenses, defense cost settlements, and regulatory fines that also need to be considered, which are completely covered within a cyber insurance policy. And lastly, what I personally believe is the safety net and the reason that we have cyber insurance in place for businesses is for remediation. So we will cover all cyber event response costs associated with crisis management, data restoration, virus extraction, notifications, and more importantly, the legal costs associated with remediation. In addition to that, there are several optional covers that we also provide, which I'm sure Josh can talk through depending on a case-by-case basis. But things like criminal financial loss, which are due to a fraudulent payment, such as social engineered theft or push payment theft. If a business relies on a rigorous supply chain, we provide non-IT contingent business interruption, tangible property cover, and directors and officers cover. The first of its kind in the market, we've also actually launched personal home cyber security protection. So individual personal cover for a home IT. So me as a father of 2, if anything happens within my household, if my children fall victim to cyberbullying, they are completely covered, and all of those response costs and remediation costs are also covered. And then we also have group personal cover, which relates to an employee benefit scheme whereby an employee can purchase cover for all of its employers. Now, when it comes to paying a ransom or actually falling victim to becoming a ransom from a ransomware attack, there are 4 key things that really need to be considered. The first is the notifiable data breach scheme, which is any unauthorized access to or unauthorized disclosure of personal information about one or more individual. If the business turns over $3 million or more, this immediately needs to be notified to the OAIC within 30 days of the breach. You must conduct a full assessment of the impact, and you must inform each individual impacted or compromised. Then there is the business impact that you need to actually consider. Immediate decline in revenue or complete halt of revenue, the reputational harm, counter-legal pursuits, the ransom payment itself, post-incident restoration, legal notification costs, and the ongoing decline in revenue that needs to be considered. When it comes to a ransom payment, we must conduct a sanction check on the recipient Bitcoin wallet to ensure that who we are paying is not associated with a sanctioned entity. We must facilitate the Bitcoin payment, and we must ensure that the environment is safe before the business can be back up and running. Not to mention fines and penalties, such as failure to comply with these minimum security standards or compliance can result in up to a $50 million fine, a fine that is 30% of the business's annual revenue, or $420,000 per individual that's affected. Now, to bring this back down to our level and to actually show you through a tangible example as to what we deal with day to day, this will really kind of help shape and contextualize how cyber insurance and how it responds to a ransomware attack and how important an incident response plan is for a business to survive and get back up on its feet. We work with many businesses, all shapes and sizes across Australia. This particular example I plucked out is a New South Wales law firm that specialises in commercial litigation and family law. Now, the event goes like this. A staff member went into work one morning and turned on her computer and unfortunately couldn't log in. She turned to the person next to her and said, "Hey, I can't log in. Can you log into your screen?" And they both agreed that they couldn't log in. So they waited for another staff member to come in, who then mentioned that there was a ransom note or some funny kind of note on the computer screen. They turned around and noticed that this note was on every single computer in their office. So immediately they grabbed their IT contractor and said, "We can't log in. There's a funny note on our screen. Can you please take a look?" The IT contractor immediately confirmed that everything in the business had been seized and they were a victim of a ransomware attack. The insured immediately called the emergence hotline, and within minutes, we triaged with their CEO, CFO, and managed service provider. Within this call, we retained our forensics, and we had forensics go through the IT environment to understand what the root cause of the problem was. They identified that the ransomware threat group were able to get in through an unknown vulnerability and seize absolutely everything within the business. When it came to negotiations, the ransomware group was a known group called Quantum, and they had demanded a $400,000 ransom in return for a decryption key and their data. We had to engage a professional negotiator at this point because the entire business's backups and privileged information had been extracted. When it was identified that we could not get the business back up and running because the backups had been extracted, the CEO immediately refused to negotiate with the threat actors because, quote, he didn't want to speak to criminals, which is completely fine. Our team then had to negotiate on their behalf. We had to facilitate a ransom payment. We received the decryption key back and began decrypting and restoring their entire environment back up on a safe network. Now, just to contextualize what this looks like, IT forensics costs $50,000. Legal counsel costs $50,000. Public relations costs $15,000. The ransom and the negotiator totaled $400,000. Now, the total billed claim was just over $500,000. Arguably, if they did not have cyber insurance, these costs would have been doubled. But because they had the benefit of that safety net, which is the response team, to immediately respond to this event, get the business back up and running, and remediate their entire systems, we were able to manage these costs effectively, resulting in a total billed claim of $520,000. Now, what the business learned from this event was how critical a data restoration policy is, how critical data protection is, ensuring that all of your backups are kept segregated, air-gapped, offline, and tested. And more importantly, how critical an incident response plan is. Now, if we're legally bound to actually have fire evacuation plans and exercise these a few times a year, why don't businesses have an incident response plan or go through tabletop exercises to ensure that they know how to respond to these events that occur? Now, lastly, just everyone put your volume up just a little bit because I want to show you something a bit gripping here. So the threat actor tried to get in touch with the CEO, and the CEO refused to communicate with the threat actor. So instead, the threat actor group left this voice message on the CEO's phone. That was lovely. There was even a chat room so you can talk to them and negotiate. But much like we covered in the beginning, this is quite literally a business model, and this is the way that they operate. So I would strongly encourage an incident response plan just to make sure that you speak to your MSP and you're able to work on this together, because I truly believe that cyber insurance or protection largely is a three-way partnership between your cyber insurer, your MSP, and the CEO of the business. Thank you.
So folks, on that note, we've seen our first question come through in Q&A, and we have a section for Q&A. So if you've got questions that you'd like to type into the Q&A, once we get to that section, we'll answer those. Alex, thank you. Quite insightful, and for me, staggering that in 2024, we're still having conversations around air gapping of data. So, air gapping of your backups from your data to ensure your ability to restore in the event of a cyber threat. Absolutely staggering, but unfortunately not at all surprising with some of the stuff we find through our audits and assessments. Okay, so cyber incident response plan fundamentals. Before I dive into this slide, I would just like to bring everybody's attention to the ACSC Cyber Incident Response Plan template. Now, if you do a quick Google search for ACSC Cyber Incident Response, this should be one of the very first documents that you receive. Now, at first glance, there is a lot of information in here. Lots and lots of pages and quite a large amount of actionable intel. In our experiences, though, this framework really is a guide. There are fundamentals that should be followed, and I'll just flick back to our slides as a whole. So whilst it's worth doing a download of the Cyber Incident Response Plan template from the website itself, the reality is that your Cyber Incident Response Plan needs to be understood by all stakeholders within the business. Your Cyber Incident Response Plan should be frequently tested. As Alex had alluded to, we do testing of our fire evacuation drills. How frequently is your Cyber Incident Response Plan itself stress tested against different scenarios? And we recommend as a managed services provider that not only do you let us know and provide us with a copy of your cyber incident response plan, but you also provide a copy of it to your insurance party. Sometimes the insurer will have a specific clause that says if they are not the primary party notified in a cyber event, then your insurance policy is void. Emergence is not one of those insurance companies, and we're not speaking specifically. We're providing some general scenarios here, but we recommend that you provide this cyber incident response plan to the insurer so they're at least aware of your terms of engagement. Does your managed services provider or your IT department actually have an offline copy of your cyber incident response plan? Because if your primary systems are where your CIRP is stored and your primary systems go offline, then you have no ability to enact your cyber incident response plan. Do your staff know where the physical copy of the CIRP is? Occasionally, we'll have an internal meeting and we'll ask the team, great, where's the CIRP? And we'll ask them to go and physically put their hand on our CIRP. So that way we know that the team are aware of where the physical location of the CIRP is. We've seen organizations that have changed insurance providers and they haven't updated their CIRP. They may have actually amended it. We see a big assumption that your managed services provider's CIRP covers your organization, and it doesn't. In reality, we have to follow the rules that are actually set out by your executive committee or your board. Now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to fly through this. Fundamentally, for the managed services providers that are on this call as well, do not attempt remediation unless you are familiar with incident response. Now, for the other clientele and people that are on this call, if your MSP isn't familiar with cyber incident response or they don't have an incident response team, this would certainly be one of the first questions that I'd be asking and recommending that you have a conversation with them around what your expectations are with regards to your CIRP. Alex, I'll let you touch on CyberSuite.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a sister company here within Emergence, and they're a cybersecurity advisory arm. So what I want to quickly touch on is all policyholders, all Emergence policyholders are entitled to a free 1-hour consultation with a virtual chief information security officer. And within this consultation, they're allowed assistance with developing the foundations of an incident response plan. That is how important we believe this is. So we need to provide additional services and support to all policyholders to build an incident response plan. We also provide real-time threat notifications and vulnerability scanning and dark web monitoring, which is imperative. There are a range of additional services that you can tap into as well, such as tabletop exercises and training if you require.
Awesome. Now we're going to flick over to questions in just a moment, but on the 10th of September at 10 a.m. will be our next webinar, which is tabled for Are You AI and Copilot Ready? QR code will take you directly to the booking link, and we will circulate the Microsoft Teams invitation for that following today's webinar. So in regards to questions, we've got our first question that's already come through, so thank you for that. Alex, the question is, with regards to the New South Wales law firm example, how will have responded differently if the issue was unpatched systems and the business was aware of it?
Yeah, great question. So unlike any kind of insurance, what we're dealing with, I believe, is almost like ER. We have to respond immediately. We have to remediate a business immediately and then backtrack or monitor this simultaneously. The policy still would have responded, to answer your question. That is declared when you go through the questionnaire. You declare how frequently you do patching and backups. For example, every 30 days manually or automated. This isn't something that would then, stop us from remediating or covering the issue. We would respond regardless.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Alex. Another question that's come in, and this one I'll ask to the two of you. In your experiences, what is the most common attack vector?
So I'll just I'll start if that's okay, Alex. In my experience, the most common attacks that I've experienced would be impersonation of a director or social engineering fraud. So quite often the threat actor will gain access to the system, study the business, study how they talk, and then use that information to mirror, CEO or directors' emails and email signatures to try and encourage employees within the business or the accounts divisions to pay invoices to, the incorrect bank account details. And the other one would often be ransom, a business being held to ransom. We haven't seen too many of those personally, but statistics show that that's probably the most common in the market.
Thanks, Josh. Alex?
Yeah, I have to second that. So based on our data, both within Emergence, both within Australia and also globally, it is ransomware. It's the easiest form of attacking a business. Sometimes you don't even need critical information. You can just seize a business and you begin bleeding money immediately. But second to that, it's business email compromise. So when it comes to an organization or duping an organization, the only number of people that you need to trick into clicking a malicious link is one person within an entire business.
Yeah. Well, folks, that's 10:30. And with that, I'd like to thank both Alex and Josh for their time today. Feel free to reach out if you've got any other questions, and really enjoy the rest of your day. We really appreciate you joining us. The response and the number of people on the call today has been excellent. Really appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.